Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Lowell podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in beautiful downtown Lowell. WellPoint is the only healthcare plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. We thank our friends at WellPoint for helping to make this podcast possible, all of our Inside Lowell podcasts for that matter, along with the rest of our podcast sponsors. Of course, our friends at the Washington Savings Bank. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Boston North Company, business solutions for restaurant and retail. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection since 1925. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on for nearly half a century, and by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to downtown Lowell and the Mill City. And with that, I'm going to turn to the, dare I call it, the part of the future of Inside Lowell, which actually stretches outside of the Lowell town lines, because as you know, here at Inside Lowell, we also focus on the town of Dracut. We focus on the town of Chelmsford. And beginning today with this podcast right here, we're going to start focusing inside Tewksbury. And joining us right now as well, one of the ultimate Tewksbury insiders. She serves on the Tewksbury Finance Committee. She's on the Board of Trustees at the Tewksbury State Hospital. See, everything ties back to Lowell. I bet your ears have been burning the last few months. And of course, she is also the president and founder of Tewksbury Together. And she's the newest insider here at Inside Lowell. Jomarie Buckley is joining us here in the WellPoint Studios. Hey, Jomarie.
Hey, Teddy. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thank you for just wanting to be a part of this and to help kind of bring, some 21st century media to the town of Tewksbury, something I know that, you and I both care an awful lot about. You actually have a little media background. Folks will recognize the voice if they listen to the WCAP morning show.
I was going to say, Dennis and Uncle Buck. This is what I look like.
Dennis, Candy, and Uncle Buck. This is your dream. Now you get to see Jomarie Buckley.
I was going to say, I think they were the regulars that I remember. I'm not sure who else is out there. But
I'm going to tell you, I loved listening to you, and I always thought, boy, there's a bigger role for her somewhere along the way, and I'm glad you decided to do it here, rather than elsewhere. Because I'm just looking at your background, and I want to talk a little bit about that. You're real uncomfortable. Anyone who goes to Inside Lowell and sees your bio is going to realize this woman doesn't talk a lot about her.
No.
But you've done a lot. Besides what we talked about, your current role in Tewksbury, which we're going to focus on, and you're going to use as going forward when you start hosting your podcast by yourself.
Yes, sir.
Tewksbury Together
God
podcast.
Help us all.
You actually have a pretty rich and, dare I say, diverse history before that, right? You served as a member of the Board of Selectmen in Wilmington, right?
I did. Yep. So 10-second elevator pitch of who Jomarie Buckley is I was Jomarie Ardito. I was born in Lawrence. I grew up in Burlington. My very first debut was on BCAT a million years ago. I did a very brief TV show called Devil Talk because we were the Red Devils, and I was one of those annoying kids in high school who did a little bit of everything. Raised my kids in Wilmington. So I lived in Wilmington for about 17 years. And during that time got involved, like you do when you have a family, got involved in the kids' schools, was the president for the Wilmington Educational Foundation, started a nonprofit in Wilmington it was originally Women of Wilmington, became We're One Wilmington. I'm very proud that still exists. Now that I'm not there anymore, I always said it was more than just me, and it is. And I'm very proud of my friend Pam, who took it over and is doing phenomenal things. Was on the Wilmington Select Board for 2 terms, was on the Wilmington Housing Authority. So just would get involved. I got involved. I avoided politics for a long time. I did a lot of volunteer work and charity. I'm not a fan. It's ironic because I helped Jim Maselli's campaign way back in the day. When he passed away, helped Dave Robertson's campaign, helped Bruce Tarr's campaign for people who think that somehow I'm a Dem, and I'm really not. And eventually, I remember Jim Maselli saying you should run for select board. And his wife, before I even responded, his wife said to me, no, she's got 4 young kids. She shouldn't be in politics. And I thank her for that, Mrs. Maselli. But eventually I was asked, my kids were a little older, and I said, I'll give it a shot, see if I enjoy it, see if I'm meant for it. Because I don't think, as one of the things I'm sure we're going to touch upon throughout my time here as an insider is I don't think just because you're everybody's friend or coach or drinking buddy that you necessarily can transition into being leadership in a town. But it was a good transition. I really enjoyed it. It was heartbreaking when I was leaving Wilmington to move to Tewksbury and had to step down. A lot of Tewksbury residents probably aren't familiar with me yet because I'm what you would consider a blow-in still, that I've only been there for 4 years.
They have blow-ins elsewhere, not just in Lowell.
Right.
We call them blow-ellians.
I know. Well, Lowell,
of which I'm one, by the way.
You're amazing in Lowell. I mean, I meet people who've lived in Lowell for 30 years and they still say, I'm not really, like, they have to give the caveat because they know, like, if you're not born in Lowell, you can't say you're a Lowellian. And it's amazing. I've worked in Lowell for many years in the juvenile court. I have so many dear friends in Lowell, so I'm very excited to be doing this here. That's one of the reasons why when Jerry asked if I would co-host on CAP, I said yes, because Lowell is a very important part of my story and who I am. But so Tewksbury is, I've been a resident of Tewksbury now for over 4 years, and it's the home. It's my forever. They might not consider me a Tewksburyan, but I consider myself that I'm going to live in Tewksbury till my last breath. So I need to start stepping up and helping out.
Stepping up. You're already on the finance committee, board of trustees at the hospital. And this Tewksbury Together, which it's not just the name of your podcast, right. Tewksbury Together. It's actually an organization that you started trying to engage people in the community. Tell me a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Sure. So what I learned in Wilmington is many people doing small amounts of things can make great change, right? And that's one of the things I believe in. It's how I was raised. My dad was my coach. My mom was very involved in town. And it's just a common sense thing that if you can band a bunch of people together and they can just do a little bit, it creates a change, right? And so that's what I focused on in Wilmington, is getting a bunch of people together to do little community service projects that eventually impacted the community for the positive. And when I came to Tewksbury, I was asking people who'd lived there for a long time, what can we do? What is a need? And they kept saying, bring water to Tewksbury, bring water to Tewksbury. So Tewksbury Together to me and to my board really means, getting people who might not be as engaged elsewhere. It's not political. It's not, affiliated with the schools or sports. It's its own entity. And getting people involved to make an impact for the positive in a time where I think we need it. We need to see those kind of acts of kindness, and we need to see the positivity, and we need to see change that can happen without, a ton of time, treasure, or talent, as they say.
And I love that it's not political, because whether you're left, right, wherever your background is, you've got to come together for your community.
Absolutely.
If you can't find common ground in making your community a better place,
right,
you might need to find a different community where nobody cares, and that's fine too. Yep. But you should at least try to make your community a better place, and I love that. So, and I love that you're letting us co-opt the name together into your new podcast. And I'm looking forward to. You're gonna have a lot of guests coming on, a lot of stuff, but you're not just going to talk about politics, as you said. You're going to talk about community things and other things, and looking at I like to say in my Big Fat Lowell podcast, it's looking at the world through a Lowell lens. Yep. Well, the Tewksbury lens also applies to the world.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, to give people a little bit of taste of what your style is and the kind of things you're going to talk about. So we just got through the election. Today's November 11th that we're recording this. We're still, 6 days into it. People are still recovering, celebrating, whatever your viewpoint is. There's some interesting numbers in there. And I found Tewksbury, and I also looked into Wilmington, because that's a little bit of your background.
Yes.
The numbers in the election results, they tell me a story, even more so than Lowell. And they're fascinating. First, let's start with the presidential ballot. Yes. Donald Trump won Tewksbury. Had he won against Biden or Hillary?
I believe so.
He had won Tewksbury.
Yeah, it was close. I'm pretty sure he won. Yes. Yep.
Okay. I went further down the ticket, and I noticed that John Deaton won Tewksbury 52-45.
Yes.
He also beat her in Wilmington. Wilmington went for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. It was close, but not, But it was interesting that John Deaton outperformed Donald Trump in both Tewksbury and Wilmington, and he beat Elizabeth Warren by 7 in Tewksbury.
Yes.
What does that tell me something about Tewksbury?
Yes, it does.
Or does that tell me something about Senator Warren and how people are feeling about her?
I think it tells you both. I think so. Tewksbury is, if you know, Massachusetts, a lot of people's historic attitude about voting in Massachusetts is unless you're going to vote Dem, you're really throwing away your vote. And I think what these numbers are telling us is that is not going to be the case going forward necessarily. And we need to be more conscientious in our voting, because you're not throwing away a vote by automatically voting Democrat. And your vote does matter if you're independent or Republican. I think what it's telling us, Tewksbury is a very conservative town. It's a very hardworking, you know, middle class town. And I think those numbers reflect that, because when we think about Massachusetts and we think about people who are very much to the left, I think we can think of the towns that might be in. And those are kind of the upper middle class to upper class.
See, I thought the mistake I made is I thought Tewksbury, because I know a lot of folks who live close to the Andover line. I just think they're like, I'm like, Tewksbury's like Andover, as I used to call them. Like, no, not looking at these election results, right?
Tewksbury touches Lowell too. Tewksbury touches Billerica. Tewksbury touches Wilmington. And I think Tewksbury is very proud. I mean, you meet someone who grew up, my husband is like the ultimate get if I can get him on the show, because he hates the idea of this. I'm not sure I can get him on. I do think if I tell him there's nothing he can say that would get me canceled, is the challenge that he might accept. But he grew up in Tewksbury, and to me, he's the epitome of Tewksbury. You know, he can still tell you about winning the football championship in middle school. He can still tell you very much Redmond pride, Tewksbury tough. You know, that's the attitude. You work hard. You want to relax on the weekend. You know, and that's Tewksbury. And I think that's what these election results show is we want to take care of home first. You know, Tewksbury very much is home first. And I think Wilmington to a lesser extent, like I was saying to you, you know, what I find interesting in the story in these numbers, Wilmington is very much traditional. It's conservative, but I think there's more traditional to it, you know, whereas Tewksbury is not going to flinch if someone calls someone a name. Right. And Tewksbury is not going to back down if someone challenges you to a fight. Wilmington flinches. Wilmington will still think of, you know, what's proper and, you know, what we don't want to have out there. Whereas Tewksbury's like, if you're challenging me, you know, you're going to hit first, but it's going to be your last punch. I really think it's kind of Tewksbury's attitude.
All right. And we haven't gotten to the most interesting numbers yet in Tewksbury when we really get local, but those really kind of rang something in my brain. But as we worked our way down the ballot, you know, Seth Moulton, your congressperson, you have a different one than we do here in Lowell. Both ran unopposed. Right. Seth Moulton and Lori Trahan, but they both got about 30%. Congresswoman Trahan's total actually ended up being 29% blanks or write-ins, which is a very high number. But, you know, Lowell kind of really, if you took Lowell out, the rest of the towns in her district might have balanced that a little bit. But Seth Moulton, 69-31 in Tewksbury. 31% of the people decided
not to check the box.
I'm blanking it or I'm writing somebody in. Interesting that just, 2 days after the election, he came out backpedaling on a piece of legislation that he actually filed regarding the whole transgender in sports issue. And as soon as I saw the numbers, I'm like, uh-oh. Seth Moulton might have seen something. Seth Moulton might have gotten the message.
If I were a conservative Republican, I would look at those numbers and think, now's my time to start putting my war chest together. Because I would be nervous if I was Seth Moulton. And I've met him. I know we had texted about this a little bit.
You've got to get him on for a Tewksbury Together podcast.
I met him once. I used to know staff that worked for him that they've moved on. Lovely people. You know, I know he's hardworking. But if I were in his camp right now, I would be saying to him, it's time to rein it in. Or, you know, there's gonna be a legitimate opponent in the next cycle.
In Wilmington, it wasn't much better, 69.5 to 30.5. Again, 30.5 blanks for him. Barry Feingold, your state senator, 68% of the vote only in Tewksbury, 32% blank. In Wilmington, 33% blank for Barry Feingold.
Again, same message. If there's a strong conservative out there who's been on the fence about running, I think they're going to be really thinking it through for the next cycle.
And he still has Lawrence and Andover in his district, right? He lost Drake it.
Right.
But I looked at those Lawrence results, and there was... in the presidential race, I should have looked at Feingold's Lawrence results, but in the presidential race, Kamala Harris, the vice president, only won Hispanics by 12%, whereas Hillary Clinton won them by, I think, 65 or 66. There's a huge ground shift going on out there. And
Yep.
Barry Feingold may want to start paying attention a little bit, right?
Yes, he should. Yeah, he definitely should. And I feel with Barry, he wasn't it didn't do him any favors when they did the redistricting, and he kind of lost Drake and he got Wilmington, because Wilmington's its own animal and entity, and if you're not familiar with it, you could get lost in it pretty easily. But I think he needs to. I think what we're being told by all of these results is the traditional mechanism of politics is ending, the traditional way of campaigning, and you kind of door knocking, and that's in the past, and there's a new way. Like if you look at Dave Robertson's opponent in Tewksbury, now this guy, I don't even know if there was one sign for him. Deaton, there was no signs that I saw in Tewksbury for him, and he won Tewksbury. I saw Warren signs, I didn't see Deaton signs. The guy running against Dave Robertson for the state rep, the only campaigning I saw him do in Tewksbury was to take posts and retweet them on community pages, not saying, this is how I feel, not giving a position statement with it, but saying, what do you think? And then not engaging with people as they're commenting. So literally the only presence he was on Facebook and social media by just sharing information and what do you think? And he did pretty well, he refused to debate. So no one even knows the sound of his voice.
Wait, the challenger refused to debate?
Didn't even participate in the debate. No one knew the sound of his voice, and he still did that well.
All right. So that guy, for those who are not familiar, is Paul Sarnowski.
Yeah.
There was also a third-party independent candidate in there, George Hugh Ferdinand.
Yeah.
So in Tewksbury, 45.6% of the vote went to the incumbent. He was under 50%. 34.5 for Sarnowski, 12.43 for the third party candidate, 7.5% blank. So when you total up everyone who didn't vote for the incumbent, and he's won how many terms now? 3, 4?
2018 was his first term, so this is his fourth.
So this is his fourth term that he's going to serve. About 54.5% of the people in Tewksbury didn't vote for him.
Correct.
The Wilmington numbers were slightly better. 50.78 did vote for him, but that still means 49 and some change either went blank, or they did go blank, right? They went blank or for one of the opponents. The blanks were very high.
I was going to say, Sarnowski is from Wilmington, so I would expect him to have done a little better in Wilmington than Tewksbury.
Did he campaign in Wilmington, or did he use the same strategy he used in Tewksbury?
I believe it was the same strategy. I saw a few of his signs out and about, but they weren't on people's property. That's the other thing is, back in the day, it was the rule that you could only put lawn signs when people approved them. And he was just kind of throwing them on vacant lots and, on the medians in between on town property. And there they were, So I think the way that we campaigned, the way that we were taught to campaign, the way that I was, part of Jim Maselli's campaign a million years ago is not the way campaigning is going to be going forward at all.
So, yeah, it's changing. Is Robertson, in your mind, is Robertson doing a good job representing? He replaced a legend. I mean, McNally was like, God out there in both of those communities. So naturally, it's tough to step into those shoes. But did those numbers surprise you?
No. So in the interest of full disclosure, I was Dave Robertson's campaign manager, as was my husband, his last cycle. This time we both, stepped back a little bit. He had other people involved. So I want to put that out there. I think Dave is a great guy. I consider him a friend. It does not surprise me that the numbers were what they were, because Dave is really smart kid. And I say kid, my husband's going to cringe that I'm saying kid, because one of the things that we were always trying to do is like mature him up, right? Because he was young. I mean, when you look
he was a kid when he
started.
In his 20s, right?
When he started, he was young. He had been an aide, had no business kind of stepping into the role of rep, and he did a great job learning the process, boots on the ground. No one expected Jim Maselli to pass away. No one expected that opportunity to kind of arise when it did. And he's really been trying. I think the difficult thing is when you're a newer rep, you need to have a great staff. And I think one of Dave's failings is that he doesn't really have a staff that's as responsive, like as you're used to. Like when you call Bruce Tarr's office, someone's calling you back. Barry Feingold, you send an email, someone's getting back to you. Jim Maselli, Dave was getting back to you, or someone was getting back to you. And I think when you're the new kid, you kind of have to get that going quickly. And I think that's been his struggle is he's really in there fighting for different bills, and he's really in there fighting to do the work. But the constituency work, I think, sometimes falls by the wayside because of that. And I also know, he was very clear when he started that he wasn't going to be the next Jim Michelli. He wasn't going to be doing this for 35 years. So I think, what you expect is different. From as a constituent, you're expecting Jim Michelli, who would be at church every Saturday at 5:30, who you'd see at Market Basket, and he'd stop and talk to you, and and would be at every event. I mean, he literally passed away on the baseball field in Wilmington for the opening day ceremonies. You know what I mean? Like, you can't get a more perfect example of a local politician who gave everything to his constituents. So I think he's been battling that his whole, for the last 4 cycles.
So you weren't surprised, but
No.
it was the good news from him is your thought is it was more a constituent services thing, maybe not as responsive. Was there an issue there that maybe he's in trouble over? There's a number of things out there from the MBTA communities issues.
He's trying.
And others.
I mean, he shows up. I have to say, like I know State Hospital was one of the things I had told you is kind of a Tewksbury thing. The select board recently had they added it to the agenda late. Everyone was aware of it. He was the only one who showed up. No other state rep showed up. No senator showed up. Dave Robertson was there. You know what I mean? And I think those are the things that are important that are kind of overlooked because it's easy to overlook them. He showed up. Olin in Wilmington, Olin was an ongoing issue in Wilmington for years and years and years, that the Superfund site that they had. Mm-hmm. He was the one always showing up. He was the one that would answer. Even if it meant putting his neck out, he was the one answering the questions and being there. Whether, good, bad, you didn't want to hear what he had to say, he was at least there saying, listen, I understand, this is a concern. This is a concern for you. It's a concern for me. I'm going to try to do what I can. And it's difficult when you're there alone. Like the Tewksbury State Hospital issue, it's really a state funding issue. At the end of the day, you take away kind of the witch hunt of it, and you take away the histrionics of people with the, the hypothetical, murders that are going on that aren't really existing, and the people trolling the grounds that are ready to assault people that aren't really happening. It's a state funding issue, and he sees that, and he's the only one saying, let's have these meetings, let's do this. He's showing up. He's the one trying to meet with the state hospital leadership, and he's the one doing the work in the town, and he's not getting the credit for that. So I would say out of what we have, he's the one trying the most as far as I can see. But I also feel like if there was a strong conservative person that came in and was like the voice of reason, like, okay, that he would have a really difficult time.
Is there, to your knowledge, is there a kind of a conservative lurking on a Wilmington school committee or board, or Tewksbury Board of Selectmen or school committee that might look at exactly what we looked at and says, 2026, I'm going to start working now.
Absolutely.
Who do we keep an eye on?
Absolutely. 𝐲𝐿 𝐁𝐫𝐤 in Wilmington. I'm shocked that he didn't run this time. The only reason I can think of is he's not ready to retire. Because I've been waiting for that announcement. I'll put it out there. I told you I'm not running ever again anywhere. So I'll spill all the tea. He has been on the Wilmington Select Board for a million years. He comes from a strong family in Wilmington of conservative people. His brother was the town manager, like revered town manager. There's literally a quote of Mike 𝐤𝐿 in the high school lobby as you walk in. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to name the town hall after him in Wilmington because he's revered. The family's revered. Good, hardworking Wilmington family. Kevin, I have other opinions about that aren't always positive. I think he's doesn't always put Wilmington first, but I also think he has the support that I would be shocked if he didn't run. Because out of everyone else in Wilmington, I would have said Judy O'Connell, but she's now the assistant town manager. She got appointed like literally the day that she was eligible to be appointed for that position. I would have said they would put her up and she would have a really strong chance of winning. But given that she just took that role, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see 𝐲𝐿 𝐁𝐫𝐤. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Peterson run. I don't know which Peterson it would be. There's the 3 Peterson brothers who are attorneys. They're kind of raising the next generation. Rob Peterson was the moderator. I really thought he was going to step into more state politics. He has a young family, so I understand that it might not be the time now, but he would definitely be a contender. I would be shocked if he didn't win if he ever decided to run.
All right, so a little preview.
There you go, Wilmington, right? Not just inside Tewksbury.
Exactly. We're chatting with Jomarie Buckley, a member of the Tewksbury Finance Committee, and a million other things. By the way, we didn't even mention that you're an attorney, you have been for 20 years, and now you're dabbling into real estate.
Yeah,
as well.
so I did real estate on the side pretty much the whole time I've been an attorney. I like to stay busy. It keeps me out of trouble somewhat, although we'll see. So I did real estate. I thought I was done with real estate when I sold. I thought the last transaction I would ever do was selling my house in Wilmington. But I have some people now who are, trying to get me back into it, and I'll dabble. I'll continue to dabble. I started studying because I do child welfare work. So just in the interest of full disclosure, I'm an attorney for the Department of Children and Family. So my day-to-day life is not very pleasurable usually. It's usually difficult. Being an attorney in that world for 20 years can be difficult. So I've been trying to find ways to just kind of get back into the real world a little bit here and there and kind of enjoy thinking about, normal everyday problems instead of severe issues. So I started studying to become a certified financial planner because I'd love to talk to people more about that, like happy planning, than, how do you get your kids back out of state custody? So
you're dealing with people at a better point in their life.
Correct.
Than whatnot.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, we're glad to have you here as the newest member of the Inside Lowell family, our newest insider, Jomarie Buckley. A couple of other things I want to touch on quickly. And then, by the way, we're taking the training wheels off. You're going to come sit in this seat right here going forward and bring in your guests. And we're going to learn about Tewksbury and Wilmington and the rest of the world through Jomarie's lens. But the state, you mentioned the state hospital is one of the big issues right now. Hey, look, Tewksbury State Hospital is a big issue here in Lowell. We keep hearing it come up. And look, I'm one that says, I said, why are we struggling with what to do with our homeless, our mental illness, the mental illness issues when we have these giant grounds out in the town of Tewksbury that are equipped to handle that? You just said no. Why?
No. Hey, first of all, I want to keep as much open space. I mean, I will say the state has a ton of land in Tewksbury. And it's trails right now. And it's, they're in the process of making a disc golf course there. There's farmland that gets leased out. One of the things I love about Tewksbury is when I'm driving home, when I leave Lowell today and I drive home, there is going to be a stretch of my drive that I'm just looking at woods and farmland and just, it's nice. It's nice. It's not overdeveloped. It's not apartments. It's not. And I think Tewksbury deserves a little piece of that. And I know one of the kind of fear-mongering concerns is that eventually Governor Haley's going to be like, wait a minute, there's 800 acres in Tewksbury. Why aren't we developing it to make housing there? And I say, please don't do that, because we need to keep that space. When you look at the state hospital proper, I will say this. There is the opportunity at the state hospital proper. There are condemned buildings currently on the state hospital property that could be renovated, that could be torn down and rebuilt. But you can't do any of that until you properly staff it, until you we have, and this is the hill I will die on. I think the state hospital is doing amazing work right now with the resources that they've been given. I don't know how they do it every day. The staff there is unreal with the work that they're doing under the conditions that they're in every day. So if you want to look at the state hospital and say, hey, there's an opportunity to put more people there, great. Put more money there first. Put more funds there first. Have the staff there be there doing, the DMH side. So the state hospital, it's one of two hospitals in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has both a DMH side and a DPH side, right? The DPH side, they're doing unbelievable work. And in a facility that was built way too long ago to support the work that they're doing. The DMH side, which used to be like the mental health components that we think of from 30 years ago, is not the mental health components that they're dealing with now. They're getting forensic patients from the court every day, right? So when you got hired on the DMH side to do mental health work, were you thinking I'm doing mental health work with people who need extra mental health support? Or were you thinking I'm doing it for people who are in the process of being forensically evaluated for a crime that they've committed? Right? That's not fair to the staff. That's not fair to the people there. And it's certainly not fair to say that everyone who's there is a criminal. And that drives me crazy. It drives me absolutely insane.
Well, that's a lot of the thought. And to be clear, when I say I think that site can be better utilized, I'm talking about, the criminally insane we have prisons for that. We've shut down enough prisons.
And that's where they go to Bridgewater if that's where they're at.
With humane treatment and services for them. But the mental health issue is big, and you've got unused buildings, as you said, out there. I'm with you 100%. There's no need to build on some of those
No.
grounds because you know what? People who are dealing with mental health and are to some degree institutionalized, they also deserve a place to walk, a park or
Right.
whatever, to just kind of spend their day to play disc golf or whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah.
But if we can rebuild some of those buildings
Yes.
and use them to treat the mental health issues that
Yes.
we have, do you think the town of Tewksbury, it doesn't sound like you're averse to that. Do you think the town of Tewksbury would push back on that?
I mean, I honestly, the way that the town has been reacting, and when I say the town, I don't mean the town management. I think Richard Montori and Steve Sedgwick and the chiefs, for the most part, you know, they're working collaboratively with the state hospital, and they're trying to solve the problems of the state hospital in a nice way, in a way that I think going forward is going to make sense. I'm very disappointed with how the select board is reacting because they're just throwing gasoline on the witch hunt that the social media has become, and it drives me nuts. I don't know if you saw the Town Crier article at the end of it. I was quoted. There was after the select board meeting. I walked out of there just totally brokenhearted for the families of the people who are patients there, because if you listened to those select board members talk about the patients there, you would think they're all criminally insane, dangerous people, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. And to say, like, we should just shut it down, we shouldn't allow more patients to come in there until they fix it, we should build a wall around it, doesn't that sound familiar, right? When you think about the election results, I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's fear-mongering, and it doesn't have a place. It's not fair to the community, it's not fair to the town, to the state hospital. The reality is, from the top down, if I could wave a magic wand, Governor Healy would come to the state hospital. She'd realize that the facilities are not appropriate any further, and she would build a state-of-the-art hospital for the DPH side, and she would renovate some of the other current structures for the DMH side. She would properly staff them. She would give them the financial support that they need to be properly staffed on both sides, and that way they could receive these patients, and Tewksbury would be none the wiser for it.
Yeah, and to be clear, most of the issues that are happening with assaults and whatnot, that's happening in the criminals, kind of the criminal forensic side that you were talking about, and it involves staff that isn't prepared to deal with that, right?
Right. Well, not that they're necessarily not prepared. They're just not. I mean, my sister was a psychiatric nurse for Rentham State, you know, and she would tell me stories about it. So you could be a psych nurse and you could be fully, you know, trained, and you're still dealing with someone who's going to try to harm you. And sometimes they actually are able to. But the reality is what we're hearing about, you know, the assaults that are happening are usually staff assaults by a patient. You know what I mean? Or patient on patient assaults.
And they're not escaping out into the community.
And a community member who happens to be walking their dog is all of a
right.
sudden being terrorized. The other part of it is that people don't really seem to want to understand is that not everyone on that campus is a patient at Tewksbury State Hospital. They have other programs that are renting space there. They have rehab programs there, you know, and so those people that are eloping and that, you know, are going against medical advice, think about it. We all know someone who was getting some type of medical treatment and they decided to leave against medical advice, right? My dad was tired of being in the hospital when he had congestive heart failure and did not want to die in the hospital. He signed himself out of the hospital. It happens, right? And, you know, to say that everyone who walks off that campus is walking off and they're going to go menace the neighborhood is crazy. It's crazy. No one wants to. The people leaving there want to get home. They don't want to go and like raid your house in Tewksbury. And to hear these people talk, it's like, come on. What I love is if you actually drove on campus or you walked onto campus and you sat there, people are walking around that campus all day. People walk their dogs on campus. Staff are walking around. It's a beautiful campus to be a part of, you know, and to act like it's the danger zone, you know, it's very frustrating to say the least.
All right. One more thing before we wrap up and, you know, kick you out of the nest. You mentioned that water issues have become a big deal in Tewksbury. Well, welcome to Lowell. Water issues and broken pipes and whatnot. What's going on in your town?
So when I was I guess in the interest of full disclosure, I ran for the Tewksbury Select Board twice and have not won. But both times that I ran, I would ask people kind of what are your concerns? What is something you want to see improve in Tewksbury? Both times. So when I ran in 2022 and when I ran in 2024, people were saying the water here, we have to figure it out. There's either water breaks so that there's water issues with access, or the water's brown. And it's been an ongoing issue. And quite frankly, you know, one of the people who beat me in this past election works for the DPH of whatever other town, not the DPH, the water you know, at the water department, DPW of another town, and made this a big deal. And I want to just be like, okay, so what are you doing? Stop focusing on the state hospital and how your, you know, 20-year-old son might be scared to go outside, and tell me how you're going to fix this issue that you said you have a unique experience and knowledge to be able to fix. So again, you can tell I'm never running again, that I'm calling people out like this. The reality is, you know, we have an infrastructure issue. It's been an ongoing infrastructure issue. It's literally being fixed, it seems like, 1 mile at a time, which is not fast enough for a lot of people. You go on the Tewksbury residents Facebook page, and they're literally posting every day there's a new water main break. Every day there's a new water issue. And it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And I find it amazing that, you know, the keyboard crusaders, who are so happy to do a witch hunt for a state hospital escapee in their mind, are they're all radio silent as to what the town should be doing to fix the issue.
All right. I like that you're not afraid to tweak people who you don't agree with. That's the mark of a good host.
Well, I mean, the reality is, you know, and as you said, I think when we were talking about this idea, you know, anyone who disagrees with me, please come on and let's have a conversation. You know, I definitely don't see myself standing behind a microphone, recording this, putting it out into the world as the gospel of Jo Marie. Come and tell me why I'm wrong, and let's have that conversation. I would love to have that conversation.
Those are the best conversations with the people you disagree with.
Absolutely. Come and tell me why I'm wrong. Come and tell me why things are not the way that I see them, and let's have that discussion for sure.
All righty. Jo Marie Buckley, the newest member of the InsideLowell family, inside Tewksbury. We're launching some news. We'll start sharing some public information about the town, but also the Tewksbury Together podcast. That's what I'm really looking forward to. You got the personality and the passion. I'm excited.
Thanks, Teddy.
All right. Thanks, Jo Marie.
All right. Are we done?
Well, you're done.
See, I'm used to the radio part of it, where I can just be like, all right, we're going to break.
Let me do my quick host thing here. We want to thank Jo Marie. We want to thank you for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion today. And if you did, I hope you're going to enjoy the discussions going forward with Jo Marie. She doesn't need me around to get in the way. She's got enough knowledge of those towns and the rest of the world. I think you'll enjoy it, and if you don't, I still think you'll tune in because you'll want to hear what she has to say and push back against her through our various formats. Thank you to Jo Marie. Thank you to you. Till next time, everybody, stay safe.